Good morning. We've reached the halfway mark when it comes to our study of the book of Daniel, and I thought it'll be appropriate for us to pause for a while and to reflect on what we've actually already learned out of the 6 chapters of the book of Daniel. Before I go any further, I want to read a verse taken out of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and it's verse 15. Whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. It's interesting right here, dear friends, we are introduced to time periods, what has been and what is present and what is past and what is future, and that past, present and future will have to give their accountability to God. Now you might wonder, what is this really got to do with trying to understand what's happening in the book of Daniel? It doesn't help us to study the book of Daniel and even Revelation if we forget that time is important and that time is really what we're talking about here. In the book of Daniel, we find 2 categories. We find the category of stories and the category of prophecies. The stories of Daniel, as we find, like Daniel in the lion's den, are there for us to understand how we, when we find ourselves in similar circumstances, how we should behave and react. Like Daniel, for example, we should go on our knees at least 3 times a day, where we should be praying for God for guidance, and we should be praising Him when He gives us that guidance. The events of Daniel actually helped me to see also what I can expect. You see, the prophetic word tells me this one thing, and that is that God is in control of this world's past, present, and future. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. God is the King of the universe, and God is the King of time. What am I trying to say, you might be asking, Willie? What are you trying to say to us? Let me put it simply to you this way, and I want to use my whiteboard to show you this. When we study the book of Daniel, we are transferred back from our present time to his time period. And I just want to record that down here for you. We have what we call our present time. That's where you and I are living in 2017. But we are taken back to Daniel's time, and his time to us, where we are standing, is the past. But what I want you to understand here is that when we study the book of Daniel and we see the events unfold in his life, it's almost as if we who are in the future are actually living in his present time. So present time, or the past, has its present time. It has a reality. This present time of Daniel took place in about 457 BCE. Daniel was in Babylon for at least 70 years. As we concluded, he was about 85. But then Daniel also is given insight into the future. And some of that future is interesting. It became present. Let me explain. Daniel chapter 2. God informs Nebuchadnezzar that you are the head of gold, and an inferior kingdom is going to follow you, one of silver. We find out in Daniel chapter 6 that silver kingdom was the kingdom of Medo-Persia, of whom King Darius was the king. It's so interesting, dear friends, that the purpose of understanding future events is that we will know how to behave in present time. I want you to understand that the reason why we're studying the book of Daniel and why we're looking at the book of Revelation later on is so that we can find out where in time are we actually situated. Has the future become our present time? One last thing I also want you to know is that as we talk about the future, we're talking about some things that will happen in the last days. For example, in Daniel chapter 12, Daniel has received visions and dreams, and he wants to know what they're all about. The angel turns to him in Daniel chapter 12 and says to him, verse 9, "Go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end." That means that there's going to be a time period in the future where God is going to draw a line in the ground and there will be no more time. That means there will be no more future. Future will be present, and we will have to give an accountability as to what we did with present time. You know, Jesus says further in Daniel chapter 12 verse 13, "As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance." You see, dear friends, what is really important to understand here is not what is going to happen in the future or what has happened in the past, but really what are we doing with that information that we gain from those two periods that influences the way in which we are dealing with the present. Are we like Daniel, choosing to bow our knees to the God of creation, the King of the universe? Has history and will the future bring us this one important revelation, and that is that there is a last day coming, a day of the Lord, in which He will reward us according to the way in which we have used present time. What are you doing with your present time today? Are you unwrapping this present that God has given to you in such a way that it is of value? Or are you wasting your present time? May God help you to see what I'm trying to teach you today.